Okay, so everyone and their nan knows of Hiram Maxim, Richard Gatling, Samuel Colt, John Moses Browning, and Mikhail Kalashnikov. Inventing firearms means your name is now a gun, and the United States hold the most firearm patents as a nation. That means they know their way around the barrel. But do you know which nation was involved in arguably all of the most significant breakthroughs in firearms development history? You probably think it's the English, but no. The Germans run again. Russians, Italians, All of those are really good guesses, but it's the French. Oh, oui. They were at the source of it. They never stopped improving since. French engineering is absolutely fascinating. It's clever, creative, and unorthodox. Just look at these shotgun breeches or these flintlock pistols. Talk about inflicting some carnage with grace. Killing and maiming historical figures and literally turning the tides of battle on multiple occasions. They're not only gorgeous, they're also functional and reliable. So, even though literally no one asked, I've compiled a list to prove my point. I'm also gonna butcher all the French names and words in this one, so please don't hate me for that, or do I don't give a flying. Pot-de-fer, which translates to iron pot, was a proto-cannon during the Hundred Years' War. Oh yeah, the French brought a gun to a sword fight. More like a spear fight or a bow fight if you ask historians. Now, of course it's an artillery piece, but as with most inventions, the next step is usually to miniaturize it. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that some sources point to the original location of the first Pot-de-fer being Florence, Italy. But why would they give it a French name then? And name a street after it in Paris. It was a cast iron or a cast bronze vase, so thick it would make Lizzo jealous, cause there wasn't any way to make precise calculations at the time. It had a touch hole for a twine fuse and launched a projectile similar to a crossbow bolt. Some of the modern day historians questioned the efficiency and the very existence of the thing, so a replica was made. Weighing in at 410 kilos, this spot proved that although functional, it was underpowered and was only able to launch the bolt to the distance of 180 meters. For comparison's sake, the range of contemporary crossbows was double that of Pot-de-fer, but hey, it's a start. Best known for its depiction in naval battles, pirate movies and games, the Culverin was the ancestor of the handheld arquebus and the musket. The name stems from the word couleuvre, meaning grass snake, which applies to a plethora of different firearms and artillery pieces. The hand culverin had a simple smoothbore metal tube closed at one end with a small touch hole to allow ignition of the gunpowder. The barrel was attached to a wooden or a metal stock. It was loaded with gunpowder and lead pellets and fired by inserting something called a slow match, which is a slow burning cord put into the touch hole. It dates back to the 15th century and was way more of a game changer than Pot-de-fer ever was. They were custom made, had fitted stocks and varied in sizes and designs so much that there are thick scientific studies devoted exclusively to various culverins. King James IV of Scotland used the culverin to hunt deer. Some culverins even had breech loading systems fitted. But that will take another 300 years to perfect, so sit tight guys. Any minute now. 300 years. That's almost as long as it took for this thing to reload. But in all seriousness, the larger culverins were later sporting removable mug-shaped chambers which were pre-fitted with gunpowder and projectiles to speed up reloading. Kinda like a cartridge within a piece of a gun, and bigger ones were swivel mounted. I bet the guys operating those things loved being the priority targets on the battlefield. Ah, the flintlock. Back in 1612, a court gunsmith of the French court, Marin le Bourgeois, created his magnum opus, using a rifle with a flint striking ignition mechanism for King Louis XIII. Although earlier uses of flint ignition mechanisms are mentioned, they are also described as expensive and unreliable. It was another major breakthrough, because prior to the introduction of the flintlock, the most popular type of rifle was the matchlock, and that still involved the use of a slow match. You had to blow air on it just before use, fit it just right so it'll reach the pan where you had to pour the gunpowder in, and the pan had a safety mechanism preventing the powder from pouring out and any accidental discharges, and also to make sure the cord actually reached the pen. You then had to tilt the cord with a lever, and matchlock instantly fired. From the user perspective, the flintlock mechanism operates in a similar fashion, but you don't need to fiddle with the cord anymore. Just load the barrel, pour some powder into the pan, and you're ready to go. Way more convenient, not to mention faster to shoot too, but not by much. Blackbeard had 6 flintlocks on him all the time for a reason. There's also a very noticeable delay between the trigger pull and the discharge. The French named it the fusil. The thing caught on like wildfire and spread all across Europe. After being introduced in the early 17th century, it was improved upon over the coming decades, culminating with a breech-loading model developed in the early 1800s by an American inventor, John Hall. Flintlock pistols are a staple by now, and their mechanisms themselves can be considered works of art. Mostly made famous for being used as a dueling weapon. Due to complicated construction and also flint availability, they never saw worldwide popularity, but their historical and cultural significance are completely undeniable. And they were also further enhanced by another French invention. Attributed to the 17th century Basques, who I've heard don't really like to be called French, bayonets turned soldiers' rifles into spears by attaching a plug blade directly into the muzzle of your matchlock or flintlock. That made for a world of difference, and then the bayonet just took over the world. Just imagine violating the crown of your precious rifle like that. It was a revolution in combat tactics. The musketeers turned into this multi-purpose unit capable of both ranged and melee engagements. Your rifleman is now also a spearman. In terms of large-scale battles, bayonets were used in the Napoleonic Wars. Bonaparte was known for his aggressive combat tactics and left no doubt in anyone's mind that bayonets were an essential tool of war. Just like any other piece of military equipment, the bayonet saw its peak and then went down the road of countless improvements. Lore says that triangular-shaped bayonet wounds are the hardest to stitch, although I seriously doubt that. If that wound is large enough, it's already a hassle anyway. Today's military training still involves bayonet drills, and we all have the French to thank for that. Okay, the Basques. A French colonel, Louis-Étienne de Touvenant, decided to immortalize himself in 1846 by improving on another leap in firearm development history devised by Henri-Gustave Delvin. He came up with the Touvenant's Carabine à Tige, also known as the pillar bridge rifle or the Touvenant rifle. The muzzle-loading Touvenant rifle improved on Henri Gustave's concept of the projectile gripping the rifling by having a conical bullet rammed home against a central stem or a pillar, known as Tige, which was fixed in the center of the rifle's barrel at the bridge. Powder would be poured into the rifle's barrel and fill the space around the stem. The rifle's .7 of an inch projectile was then dropped down the barrel on top of the powder charge. The bullet was then sharply rammed home against the stem, which acted like an anvil, forcing the projectile's hollow base outwards, creating a flange, which in theory created a gas seal. This system had a number of advantages. Not only did the stem help the bullet engage with the rifling, it also prevented the powder charge from being rammed too tightly and thus stifling ignition. The cleverly profiled ramrod also maintained the projectile's conical shape, which fundamentally improved accuracy. The rifle weighed approximately 4 kilos, which is 1/10 the weight of the Culverin, and had a tangent sight graduated out to an optimistic 600 yards. The rifle's main problem was that the gas-tight seal, which was supposed to be created by the base of the bullet expanding against the stem, could not be guaranteed, as it relied on the bullet being rammed home perfectly each time. Another genius French design, another stepping stone in perfecting small arms. Touvenant rifle was adopted by the French army in 1846, replacing the Delvin rifle musket adopted in the late 1820s. I feel like waving a baguette already, but we're far from being done with this list. And also, by the way, the ramrod of a musket is called a baguette. Another 30 years later, a French captain, Monsieur Claude-Étienne Minié, wrote his name into the history books via his brainchild, the Minié Rifle. It was the first reliable and easy-to-load muzzle-loading rifle in the world. It left the issues common to the Carabine Tige behind. The rifle used a conical cylindrical shaped soft lead bullet, slightly smaller than the barrel bore, with 3 exterior grease-filled peripheral grooves, and a conical hollow in its base. When fired, the expanding gas is forcibly pushed on the skirted base of the bullet, spreading it to engage the rifling. Although shooters were enjoying the benefits of rifled barrels for hundreds of years to that point, the loading process still involved a ramrod and a hammer, and it was a cleaning nightmare, so the potential of this system was not yet fully realized, and for that very reason the most prominent type of firearm was still a smoothbore musket. Until Mini came along. The bullet was smaller in diameter when it was loaded, so despite your mom's objections, no ramming was necessary. Better seal and rifling engagement drastically improved the muzzle loader's accuracy and muzzle velocity, rendering its contemporary counterparts well and truly obsolete. Ranging between 14 and 18 mm in diameter, the soft, rapidly spinning bullet created devastating wounds. Warfare just became even bloodier courtesy of Mr. Minié. Thanks for stopping the unification of Italy and giving this hero a limp for the rest of his life. Great job! Minié pattern rifles were dominant during the American Civil War. That explains the grim descriptions of combat and its aftermath. Thanks, Claude Etienne. Centerfire ammunition has turned the dream of rapid fire into reality. It took a while though. Technically, the first centerfire cartridge with true obturation employing the cartridge itself was created by the Swiss inventor Jean-Samuel Pauly between 1808 and 1812. He was also responsible for these adorable airship designs. Those were better times. People had taste. Unfortunately, none of his concepts have seen any mass adoption. They were commercially available and saw moderate success, but they were never militarily adopted, and that was because a certain Mr. Bonaparte turned them down. Can you believe that guy? However, the centerfire ammunition invented by the Frenchman Clément Pottet in 1829 took off. It took Pottet 36 flipping years to perfect his design though, but he never gave up. Now that is dedication. Clément Pottet was also named by Mr. Gun Jesus himself the father of the shotgun shell. And that is the highest praise there is. It should also be mentioned that a cartridge design that is the closest to the contemporary centerfire ammo was designed by a Confederate officer by the name of George Woodward Morse. In his patent, he thoroughly described the concept that wasn't fundamentally improved upon since. Not that it wasn't for the lack of trying. Dear Sig, please fix your freaking pistols before you go around ruining ammo for us. Thank you, and please don't send me your guns. So that wonderful centerfire ammo requires a weapon of some sort to fire it from, right? A few men were working towards making that fantasy a reality. In the end, it was a French-Prussian race. The latter came first, the former won. Well, let me explain. A few issues were still unresolved at the time, namely the problem of obturation and a tight gas seal. The better the seal was, the graver were the wounds. Those huge soft lead bullets did nightmarish damage to those unlucky enough to be standing in their way. All this wonderful maiming aside, the elusive dream of rapid fire was still yet unattained. And then a fellow named Antoine came along. Both ahead of its time and already obsolete, the Chassepot was worked on by Antoine Alphonse Chassepot throughout the 1850s. The inventor worked on a number of prototypes of breech-loading mechanisms, at first employing cap ignition. Breech loaders were a thing by that time, so a number of engineers worked in parallel on the same basic principle, each going their own route, and borrowing from others as well. That's what Mr. Chassepot did. He incorporated the Prussian Dreise needle gun. Settle down, 40k fans, it's just a gun with a firing pin shaped like a needle. This ignition method was injected into his design, basically solving the gas leakage issue of the former, resulting in a fusil model 1866. Despite its smaller caliber projectiles compared to its contemporaries, the even higher muzzle velocity of a heavy cylindrical bullet created even worse wounds than those of Minié pattern rifles. Yay! Sectional density! so it had better obturation, better range, and was lighter than its Prussian adversary. It wasn't the first bolt action. The Dreise needle gun beat the Chassepot by some healthy 24 years to that punch, but it was a significant improvement on the formula that was still raw. The cartridge construction is insane. It involves layers of paper and silk threads and glue, but the forward thinking of its inventor keeps fascinating gun enthusiasts to this day. It's a fine and elegant piece of steel from an age where guns were made obsolete overnight. And yet it still manages to look, sound and handle like a modern-day bolt-action single-loader. Look at that glorious gas leak onto one so cleverly solved. God damn! Black powder guns look spectacular, but they're messy, and they're really not that powerful. Wanna guess which beret-wearing nation solved that problem? Of course it was these guys.
Are you Spanish?
Just mere 18 years after the adoption of the Chassepot, a compound aptly named Pot-de-fer by a certain Mr. Paul-Marie Eugene Vieille hit the scene. Now this is without a doubt one of the most significant improvements in all of the firearms history. Behind that unassuming name hides the incredible potential of smokeless powder. It's the same modern nitrocellulose-based propellant that is still in use to this very day in pretty much anything that has a barrel and goes boom. Gone were the days of interruptions in volleys due to residue buildup, or of smoke veils obscuring visual signals and preventing battle assessment, and of the combustion products attracting moisture and ruining your barrel. However, none of those drawbacks and 3 times the power. Mr. A got you covered. So until another breakthrough in chemistry or another eco-campaign to make guns more environmentally friendly comes along, we're standing on Paul Marie's shoulders to this very day. Well, all this Centerfire smokeless awesomeness needed a cherry on top, and it came in a stylish jacket, a full metal jacket. It was in fact 2 separate innovations wrapped up in one. The newly adopted Lebel Model 1886 rifle, the one made infamous by being the infantry service rifle of the French army during the First World War. Those 2 innovations are the adoption of the full metal jacket bullet, which was invented by the Prussian Major Julius Emil Baudet, and the invention of the so-called Bayonet, better known as the Spitzer Bullet. This one is almost as important as the invention of Pot-de-fer because it was adopted by everyone and is still in use to this day. This sexy pointy bastard is the embodiment of aerodynamic perfection. Despite all the efforts, it hasn't been improved upon. Even if the bullet has a plastic tip or an exposed lead tip, it still adheres to the perfect shape of the Spitzer Bullet. Designed by Captain Georges Raymond Dezalieu, it improved the ballistics of the 8x50mm Lebel cartridge, thus adding to its downrange performance. Bayonet remained supersonic past the 800-meter mark, which is respectable even by today's standards. Once again, the French came through and brought perfection along. Now, I'm not a historian, and some of the ancient data is spotty at best, but there's more than enough evidence to support my claims, and if it sends you on an exploration quest of your own to prove me wrong or add to the list, I'd be happy as a clown. So there you have it. Any doubts about French engineering should be put to bed, despite their automotive industry's best efforts. Their race car design seems to be on point, though, well, most of the time. So, dear French people, please keep your wonderful brains hard at work. You seem to possess this secret sauce, this formula for success and outside-the-box thinking. I, for one, am looking forward to seeing your new French technological revolution. Just make sure it doesn't get Peter Thiel too excited.